They swore to protect our nation, yet they now sit on death row, accused of some of the most disturbing crimes in military history. Welcome to Buried Secrets, where we unearth the chilling truths hidden beneath the surface of valor. We will go into the shadowy world of the U.S. military justice system, exposing the stories of 4 men condemned to death for acts that shattered trust and shocked the nation. Since 1916, the U.S. Armed Forces have executed over 130 individuals, but none in the last 50 years. Why have these cases stalled in a web of appeals? What horrors led to their death sentences? From DNA breakthroughs to brutal betrayals, from overturned convictions to courtroom battles, this is a descent into the darkest corners of military justice. Timothy Hennis. In Fayetteville, North Carolina, May 1985, just days before Mother's Day. Air Force Captain Gary Eastburn was in Alabama, training for a family relocation to England. Back home near Fort Bragg, his wife Catherine tended to their 3 young daughters, 5-year-old Kara, 3-year-old Aaron, and 22-month-old Jonna. The Eastburns were a quintessential military family, eager for a new chapter. To prepare, they chose to rehome their English setter, Dixie, through a local ad. On May 7th, 27-year-old Army Sergeant Timothy Hennis, stationed at Fort Bragg, arrived at their home to adopt the dog. He seemed courteous, grateful even, as Catherine handed over Dixie. But this seemingly innocent exchange would spark a tragedy that still haunts the military community. By May 11th, the Eastburn home grew eerily silent. Captain Eastburn's routine calls from Alabama went unanswered, a red flag in their daily ritual. Neighbors noticed uncollected newspapers piling up and heard faint cries from inside. In a community bound by military camaraderie, this quiet was alarming. On May 12th, police entered the home and uncovered a scene of unimaginable horror. Catherine had been sexually assaulted and stabbed repeatedly. Kara and Aaron, found in separate bedrooms, had suffered similar fates. Astonishingly, little Jana was alive in her crib, dehydrated but unharmed. Investigators were stunned by the savagery. They meticulously documented the scene, collecting fingerprints, hair fibers, and any trace of DNA. Disturbed items hinted at a staged crime or a hasty cover-up. A neighbor's sighting of a tall man in a dark jacket, possibly a members-only jacket, carrying a trash bag near the time of the murders, pointed to a suspect. The clincher, the family dog, now in the hands of Timothy Hennis. Hennis quickly became the focus. His recent visit, combined with witness accounts and a composite sketch, made him the prime suspect. Arrested and charged, he faced trial in 1986 for the murders of Catherine, Kara, and Aaron. Prosecutors argued he had both motive and opportunity, bolstered by neighbor identifications in a photo lineup. Despite his claims of innocence, Hennis was convicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. He was sent to North Carolina's Central Prison, joining the state's death row. But the case was far from over. In 1989, the North Carolina Supreme Court overturned the conviction, citing procedural errors like mishandled evidence. A 1996 retrial saw Hennis acquitted due to insufficient direct evidence. He walked free, rejoined the Army, climbed to staff sergeant, and retired honorably in 2004. To many, he was a man wronged, but the shadows of the Eastburn case lingered. In 2006, advances in DNA technology breathed new life into cold cases. Evidence from Catherine Eastburn's body, once too degraded, was retested, yielding a shocking match to Timothy Hennis. Double jeopardy protected him from civilian retrial, but as a former soldier, he was subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ. The Army recalled him to active duty for a 2010 court-martial at Fort Bragg. The DNA evidence was the prosecution's cornerstone, despite defense arguments of contamination. A military jury found Hennis guilty of 3 counts of premeditated murder, and on April 15, 2010, he was sentenced to death. Now at Fort Leavenworth's U.S. Disciplinary Barracks, Hennis awaits the outcome of dwindling appeals, having spent nearly 2 decades behind bars. Will the military finally close this haunting chapter? Hasan Akbar, on March 23, 2003, at Camp Pennsylvania in Kuwait, as the U.S. launched its invasion of Iraq. The 101st Airborne Division was poised for battle, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Sergeant Hasan Akbar, a member of the unit, stood apart, described as withdrawn, resentful, and possibly paranoid. Some noted his clashes with superiors. Others saw signs of mental distress. In the pre-dawn hours, Akbar allegedly disabled the camp's generator, cloaking the tents in darkness. Then, in a calculated betrayal, he hurled 4 hand grenades into 3 tents and fired an automatic rifle at his scrambling comrades. The chaos was deafening. Explosions, shrapnel, and cries of confusion. When the smoke cleared, 2 officers, Army Captain Christopher S. Seifert and Air Force Major Gregory L. Stone, were dead. 14 others suffered wounds, some life-threatening. Soldiers quickly overpowered Akbar. A search of his belongings revealed a diary entry from February 4, 2003, exposing his intent to kill fellow soldiers, shattering any claim of spontaneity. Rumors swirled that Akbar felt marginalized, possibly excluded from advancing into Iraq. Others pointed to deeper grievances, though his motives remained elusive. In his 2005 court-martial, prosecutors branded him a traitor who struck at his unit's heart. The defense cited mental instability, pointing to paranoia and sleep deprivation, but the jury remained unmoved. On April 21, 2005, Akbar was convicted of premeditated murder and attempted murder, receiving a death sentence. His appeals challenging procedural and constitutional issues were exhausted by 2016. He now awaits presidential approval for execution, a step untouched since the 1960s. His betrayal a stark wound in military history. Ronald Gray. Ronald Gray, stationed at Fort Bragg, unleashed a reign of terror from April 1986 to January 1987. His victims, both civilians and military personnel, fell to a chilling pattern of abduction, assault, and murder. On April 27, 1986, 23-year-old Campbell University student Linda Jean Coates was slain. Soon after, 18-year-old Tammy Kofer Wilson was found dead, her body marked by brutal violence. Private Laura Lee Vickery Clay, 18, disappeared from Fort Bragg. Her body later found in the woods, shot with a .22 caliber pistol linked to Gray. He continued his spree, assaulting Private Marianne Lang Namath in her barracks. She survived and identified him. In January 1987, 23-year-old civilian cab driver Kimberly Ann Ruggles was found stabbed near her taxi, with Gray's fingerprints inside and her money in his possession. When Gray's image hit local news, recognition was swift. Namath and others placed him at crime scenes. The evidence, fingerprints, ballistics, survivor accounts, was irrefutable. In November 1987, Gray pleaded guilty in civilian court to 22 felonies, including second-degree murders, securing 8 life sentences. The military, however, sought its justice. A 1988 Fort Bragg court-martial convicted him of 14 charges, including the premeditated murders of Vickery Clay and Ruggles and the attempted murder of Namath. The panel sentenced him to death, stripped his rank to E1, and dishonorably discharged him. In July 2008, President George W. Bush approved Gray's execution, the first such order since 1957. Appeals have delayed it, and Gray remains at Fort Leavenworth, his crimes a grim reminder of a predator within the ranks. Nidal Hasan. On November 5, 2009, at Fort Hood, Texas, site of one of the deadliest shootings on a U.S. military base, Major Nidal Hasan, an Army psychiatrist meant to heal soldiers' mental wounds, became their tormentor. At 1:30 p.m., he entered the Soldier Readiness Processing Center, where troops prepared for deployments. Armed with an FN-57 pistol and a .357 revolver, he shouted Allahu Akbar and unleashed a barrage on unarmed soldiers and civilians. 13 died, and over 30 were injured. Responding officers shot Hasan, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. Investigations uncovered his radicalization, including emails to extremist figures abroad. Colleagues had flagged his discomfort with U.S. Middle East operations, but no action was taken, a missed chance to avert disaster. Charged with 13 counts of premeditated murder and 32 counts of attempted murder, Hasan's 2013 court-martial was fraught with tension. Representing himself, he defied military grooming standards by keeping his beard and citing religious beliefs. Showing no remorse, he admitted to switching sides in a perceived conflict. The military jury convicted him on all charges, sentencing him to death on August 28, 2013. Dismissed from service and stripped of pay, Hasan remains at Fort Leavenworth, his appeals ongoing. His case raises questions about overlooked warnings and the military's ability to detect internal threats. These four men, Hennis, Akbar, Gray, and Hasan, await lethal injection at Fort Leavenworth's disciplinary barracks, yet no military execution has occurred since 1961. Why the delay? The UCMJ requires automatic appeals through multiple courts, culminating in presidential approval. Advances in DNA evidence fuel new legal challenges. Public debates on capital punishment and concerns over global perceptions further complicate matters. These inmates live in maximum security isolation under constant watch with minimal privileges. They meet often with attorneys, seeking any grounds for appeal. Medical care, like Hasan's for paralysis, is provided under strict security. Communication is tightly controlled. Mail is screened, phone calls are rare, and visits are scarce. These cases reveal a stark collision of duty and betrayal, where men sworn to serve became architects of horror. What secrets lie buried in their stories? Should the military execute these sentences, or is there room for doubt? Share your thoughts in the comments, and for more tales from the shadows, subscribe to Buried Secrets. Until next time, keep searching for the truth beneath the surface.